Hello and welcome to the podcast, Get Rich Without Being a Bitch. And I'm Vanessa, your host for this journey that we're going to be taking on. Listen, I feel like we're going to be covering some really important topics, especially if you are a woman in business, you want to create wealth on your own terms, and you want to live richly without burning out. In this podcast, I'm going to be sharing topics, strategies, mindset changes that are going to help you shatter glass ceilings, challenge stereotypes, and frankly, be the best version of you so that you can define life and live it on your terms. Welcome. Please make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Hey superstars, welcome back. And I'm going to be diving into a really important topic today, the term bitch. I have had quite a long and difficult relationship with that term, and I'm going to share from my own personal experience. And I would absolutely love to hear your experience and your thoughts afterwards. So please write in, let me know. How does this term even resonate or not resonate with you today? The reality is the term has been used derogatorily against women as a slur against women now for centuries. And whilst it's, the media and some singers have actually tried to popularize the term again and kind of almost take away the power of the slur, I still believe it is a really derogatory, negative term. And yet in society, there's a lot to change systemically until people would stop using the term. And so where I've had to come to with this was kind of like understand first and foremost my own relationship with it. So let me just back up for a minute. I realized I was holding myself back in business and certainly holding myself back around owning my ambition, wanting more for myself, wanting to create financial security and financial freedom, because deep down inside, I believed that the only way to get those things was that I had to become a version of myself that I would not like, a version that frankly would be abhorrent to me. And that version was to be a cold-hearted bitch. Now, at the time when I uncovered that, I honestly didn't exactly know where that came from. And as I think back now, I think back to conversations in family, terms that were used when I expressed my ambition and some of those things that I wanted for myself. By the way, the term bitch was never used. So I want to be clear, that was never used. I felt like it was implied. So terms like forceful, formidable, strident, demanding, perhaps sometimes difficult, were terms that I might have heard. And I internalized those, as I said, this cold-hearted, uncaring version of a woman that I didn't want to be. And it really led me to hold myself back. Of course, if we look to the media as well, how are successful, ambitious women portrayed in the media? Well, the quintessential portrayal of that person for me is in The Devil Wears Prada. Miranda Priestly. She's very cold-hearted, very ambitious, control freak. Everybody is kind of step-toeing around her, right? She's very much a forceful character. And I think unconsciously, that's who I thought I needed to be because I lacked the right role models. Here's the thing as well. We can't control somebody else's perception. And that's what I started to realize as well, that I was trying to control somebody's perception of me. So if somebody sees me as assertive and yet they perceive me as being a bitch because I'm upholding a boundary, the truth is I really can't control that. And I was putting way too much energy into those types of things. So yes, we can get hung up in other people's perceptions, or otherwise we can start to change things for ourselves. And here's where I had to go to with this, is I actually had to really unpack the term and what it meant for me first and foremost. What did I believe were the negative connotations of the term? Right? So I started there. That felt easy. Those felt like they were really, accessible to me. Uncaring, cold, overly ambitious to the point of being ruthless, right? Not caring about who else got hurt on the journey. Perhaps backbiting, overly competitive. Like everything's about me. So I had these terms. And again, I'm not saying that they're correct or not, but those were the negative connotations. Somebody that was just all out to win at all costs and probably didn't care about people, didn't have a lot of empathy and compassion for others, probably considered themselves to be above certain things, right? A certain air of superiority. I was working with a mentor at the time, and then he said to me, and I was like, well, we're done, right? These are the negative connotations. That's exactly who I don't want to be. And he's like, well, how about some times when some of those things actually might be helpful? Like, what are some of the more positive attributes in your mind of somebody like a woman that you would consider a bitch? And I was like, oh, I'd never, ever even stopped to consider that question. That perhaps inside some of those negative attributes for me, there was some real nuggets of gold that I could use. So there are times when, yes, you're right, I could be really ruthless. If I'm really going to fight for somebody, if it's something to do with my kids, for example, right, I'm going to be a very assertive communicator. If I feel like something bad is happening to somebody, you bet I'm going to use my voice. And I'm probably not going to care too much about what other people think, right? That level of ambition, I started to realize as well that it wasn't bad. I've just been trained to think that it was. And again, that's what happens in a lot of society, right? It's okay for men to be ambitious. In fact, they're almost expected to be, but it's not okay for women. But as I started to realize that my level of ambition wasn't just about me, it was about making a better life for myself, for my kids, for my family, creating better futures, creating a knock-on effect, starting to be able to hire people, whether those were employees or independent contractors, and create opportunities for other people. I started to realize that my ambition could have really good impact in the world. So as I started to unpack those negative qualities, I could start to see that it wasn't all bad and that there were some inherent good qualities. And here was the funny thing, and I've got to share this with you. I still couldn't say the term. The term I've just found so incredibly offensive. I believe that it is a term used against women when, frankly, people lack the articulation to communicate other things. So it's just this derogatory term for women used if we're considered too difficult, high maintenance, assertive. We establish a boundary. We express an opinion that is different, particularly perhaps different to a man's opinion. So there's all of these places where instead of being able to articulate exactly what a woman is doing, she just gets labeled the bitch. And back then, I couldn't even say the term. I wanted to keep calling it the B word. And I'm actually grateful for my mentor at the time that he actually did say to me, he said, no, I want you to be able to say the word. I want you to be able to integrate it so that the word actually no longer has this emotional pull for you. You're no longer so fearful of what others are going to be thinking. And to the point that perhaps one day, if somebody actually called you a bitch, you might say, yeah, and so what? I'm upholding a boundary. You just don't like it, or whatever else that response might be. So that was a lot of the work that I had to do so that I was no longer fearful of the term itself and fearful of the perception, because I realized that my fear around that was holding me back. And it was always causing me to overcompensate, right? Instead of being assertive and declaring and communicating what I wanted, I'd probably go into people pleasing or run everything through the filter of how is this going to be received and start to dumb things down. I can think of many, many examples, right? And again, just getting more and more comfortable with then starting to own my ambition, owning what I wanted to create in the world. Now, where am I at today with this term? I think this is an important conversation. I refrain from using this term as much as I humanly can. I really do. I don't like the term because I believe it is such a slur on women and it holds us back. And yes, it was a very bold move for me to actually put it in the title of the podcast for something that I actually don't like. But what I want us to be able to do is to shift the perception that we really can create life and business on our terms. We can have financial empowerment, and we don't have to do it by being perhaps this idea of the quintessential cold-hearted bitch. That we can actually do it by embracing those qualities and values that are really important to us. It was important that as I grew my business, as I started to impact more people, I wanted to discover, not put a mask on and kind of hide behind who I was and pretend to be something else. I actually wanted to become more authentic. I wanted to be more laid back. I wanted to show more kindness, more consideration, more generosity of spirit, more compassion and empathy. These ultimately are qualities and traits that I think the world frankly needs more of. And we as women need to be role modeling those traits. They're really, really important. So that's where I'm at with it today. We can, as I say, define life and business on our terms. We don't have to become some version of ourselves that we are not proud of and that we grow not to like. And this means that we've got to be very conscious about what is it that we want to create in the world and who do we want to be as we create that next version of our life and our business for ourselves. So if this episode resonated with you today, please leave a review. I would love to know what was meaningful, insightful, what might be creating a shift for you. Drop that in one of the reviews. And also, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms on Apple or Spotify. I can't wait to catch you on the next episode.